There's no denying that the menopausal transition can be oh so hard. And there are so many things that we can do to make the transition a little bit easier and a lot more grace-filled for ourselves. I am so delighted today to have my guest, Zora Benhamou, here with us to share some of what she calls biohacking strategies to help make this journey much more grace-filled. So if that sounds intriguing to you, stick around. There's so much goodness to come. Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. My name is Courtney Townley. I am so delighted that you're here. And I'm really excited to share today's episode with you. I had the privilege recently of interviewing Zora Benhamou, who has been a long-time women's health advocate. She's a gerontologist. She has spent a lot of time talking to women about their menopausal transition, not just within the US, but globally. She's talked to women all over the world. And she really does an exceptional job at helping us to better understand some of the stigma around aging. And she also has a wealth of information in terms of how to biohack menopause. Now, let me be clear. The way that she talks about biohacking is really running experiments, which I appreciate, right? Because there really aren't shortcuts per se. There's still work involved in getting through this transition seamlessly, but she gives us some really incredible resources and intel for doing that with more ease and grace. So we are going to explore all kinds of things in this episode. And without further ado, let's just get right into it because there is so much ground to cover. Hi, Zora. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. You've got such great energy. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, I have to tell you, a lot of my favorite people in the world are people that I met through other people that I adore and love. And of course, we both know Lainey Gray, and she's the one who introduced us. And so it makes sense that our energy kind of matches and that we would just feel comfortable and have a connection. So I definitely want to give a shout out to Lainey for that. I have to tell you, as with all of my interviews, of course, I do my due diligence of research before we get on. And when I was reading through your website, I was like, oh my gosh, she speaks 6 languages.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. 6 languages. Yeah. You're a self-described nomad. So you love travel, you love adventure. And I bring this up because you have such an incredible series on Instagram about interviewing women around the world about menopause, which is so potent. And if anyone listening wants to go check that out, head on over to Hack My Age. That's your handle for Instagram, because you post them. So you said, how many have you done now of those interviews?
Over 200, I don't know, 230, something like that. And I just did another one yesterday and she doesn't want me to post it. She's like, oh, can we not post it? I'm like, oh, this is for the good of womanhood. We need you.
It really is.
I've interviewed a lot more than 250, but because I get a lot of rejection and women who do want to talk about it, but then they don't want to be on camera.
Right. I think that's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think a big part of, stepping into our confidence and all those things as we age is that willingness to be seen. But it's amazing, like that tape that plays in our head about, the judgment, the self-doubt, all the things. So it's interesting that that's showing up there. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you that I think that that's an incredible thing that you're doing. And it helps to normalize such a interesting stage, for lack of a better word, of life where so many things are shifting and changing and we feel like we're the only one. But here you have all these women who are from around the world in all these different cultures, all these different places, telling us that they too are experiencing the ups and downs.
Exactly. And you see little nuances with each person as well, because we interview, or at least I've got the camera in my hand, just interview people from all different socioeconomic levels as well. So somebody's selling fruit in the street in Vietnam to a friend of mine who's lives in Spain or something like that. It's all kinds of people, and you'll see some nuance, and there's a lot of, and I try to share on my Instagram stories at least as I'm filming. If I'm traveling to a new country, the last place I did was so difficult. It was in Czech Republic, and just nobody would want to talk to me. It was like pulling teeth. It was hard everywhere you go, but that one was a particularly hard place. So I also try to share some of the behind the scenes because you see some of these women out there, and you have to keep in mind when we some people call this research or observational research, but we have to keep in mind the woman who's open and willing to be filmed with a complete stranger has got to be a certain type, right?
So makes total sense.
And I do get a lot of women saying, well, I don't want to talk in front of the camera because it's so bad. I've had such a hard, I'm not going to be a good story for you. And I'm like, that's the one that I want to hear. It is what it is. And I have no hidden agenda. I just let the women speak. Most of the time I disagree with her completely in terms of way things. I just shut my mouth and let her speak. Yeah. And it is unfortunate that we do get a lot of women who just, they don't want to talk about it, and or they'll say it. They think that their experience is unique, that they're suffering, and I'm like, no, this is the reality of things. So please, and I beg and I plead, and some women do, and some women don't, but most of the women who don't, have a really a difficult time with menopause, and I can't always share that. So sometimes, I do attract people who has either it's okay, it's not as bad as they said, or woo, it's been fabulous. And I don't want to give that impression either that it is all great. So I do have a harder time finding those women. So we have to keep things in perspective, that if somebody's willing to speak, they may have a more positive experience, and that doesn't represent the whole world, right? Or the rest of the world. Why is Americans just suffering, everybody else isn't? Yeah. No. And we have to keep in perspective some of these things.
Curious, do you think part of that is shame? Like women, because they feel like they're the only one, or it's just their unique story, they're suffering more than most, and so they don't want to speak about it?
That, as well as when I stop a woman on the street and I ask her, hey, will you talk to me about menopause? Or can I ask you 5 questions about menopause? In Czech Republic particularly, I would get these looks like, how dare you? You think I'm old?
It was rude.
It's if I were saying, hey, you're old. Can I? And I'm like, I'm in it too. Because after it happened over and over and over again, I had to find some people, and I said, look, maybe I should get a translator. Maybe I should. And these were younger women. They were saying, no, it's just the culture. They will not speak. Even if you spoke perfect Czech, she will not talk to you because she thinks that you're basically telling her you're old and ugly or something like that. And unfortunately, that's an ageist stereotype, an ageist attitude. And the worst part of it is that they have the ageist attitude towards themselves. Mm-hmm. And that is some of the most damaging type of ism there is.
Absolutely. Well, I want to commend you for having the bravery and the courage to go out, like in a country where do you speak Czech?
I speak Ukrainian and Russian, and I understand a little bit of Polish and Czech. I have one interview where I was speaking half Polish, half Ukrainian, and she was answering in Czech. I understood. Yeah. And we got the interview done. I was like, amazing. The poor editor who's going to try to do this. This is hard.
But to be in a foreign country, not being fluent in the language, talking about a topic that maybe has been, taboo, I think, for all of us for a really long time. And to still persevere, that's awesome. It's so awesome. And I just thank you from women everywhere, because it's so important, and it's the only way the conversation is going to change. So great stuff.
I'm hoping the conversation will change. As much effort I tried in many, I would find the most difficult countries were Eastern European countries. Poland was a lot of rejection, but, I'm shy, it's okay. Whereas in Czech Republic, it was no, and get out of my store. like
Right.
attitude. it was very, yeah. So I think you'll find different attitudes, but as we go more Western Europe, a little bit easier. And I was surprised that in countries in Asia, certain countries like in Thailand and Vietnam, much easier to speak about this. I thought it would be the opposite,
Yeah.
but they were really open to speaking in front of a camera to a stranger and talk about their libido and their sexual life. And I was like, this is fabulous. And it was really fun actually doing it in those countries.
I'm curious to know, have you seen any patterns with just the level of suffering through maybe the menopausal transition? Like in
So
certain areas of the country or certain areas of
I
the
would
world?
say, yeah, well, menopause is universal.
Sure, of
We're all going to
course.
go through it. No one's getting away with it.
Yep.
Symptoms are universal. It's
Yep.
not like in China, they don't have hot flashes and we do.
Of course.
They have them.
Yes.
But I noticed that the attitudes towards menopause is different in the sense, not with everybody, but generally, that and again, maybe this isn't in front of a camera with a stranger. We have to put things into perspective, but they were more, I got this feeling that when I'd ask the question to a woman selling fruit on the street in Vietnam, and she'd look at me like, this is the weirdest thing. Like, of course I'll talk to you, but it was just why? And who really cares? I've got bigger fish to fry. I'm trying to sell fruit to feed my family.
Right.
Like the menopause is like the last thing on my mind.
Yeah.
And so I noticed certain things like that,
Okay.
other things, and most of the time in Asian countries, they were more like, yeah, it's just, hey, it's part of life. And when you ask for what would you recommend women do, they just say, just chill out, like just take it easy. I know it's hard, but relax.
Yeah.
Do whatever it takes to relax,
Yeah.
or drink juice, or exercise, or But it was. Don't worry, this will pass, and it's like kind of like a little bit of a suck it up kind of a thing,
Yeah.
and no real awareness of hormones or menopause therapy, or
Yes.
it was with anything, maybe some supplements and herbs
Okay.
to get through it. But yeah, the attitudes are a bit different. And so I would say Asia versus
course.
US and Europe.
Oh, it's so fascinating. Okay, so let's circle back to where I often will start, and we just got there a different way with you. But I would love to hear what got you so passionate about women's health to begin with? And then more specifically, what really pushed you into this sort of channel of the menopausal woman? Because that's really the population you're working with now.
Yeah, it's actually my audience who threw me into this, because I've always been interested in health and wellness in general and women's health, because I'm from LA. It's in your LA DNA to always want to be fit and healthy. But when my mom died of breast cancer when she was only 57 and I was 23, I thought, okay, wait. I don't want to just look good in a bikini. I want to not die early. So what can I do? So I dove into, just for my own personal reasons. And then because you become that health person, all your friends ask you all these questions, and then they want to be coached. And then I said, well, maybe I should get some kind of training or certification. I did the health coaching thing. And then I found the biohacking world. And I thought, this makes perfect sense to me, only because through the coaching and trying to help people, it's like, why is it certain things working with some people and not with another? And then you learn, okay, we have to tweak things. And that's just generally what biohacking is all about, is doing these own little self-experimentations on you. And we love the science and we love to dig into this, but we are very clear that the N of one experiment, meaning there's only one person that's important in this room, and that's you, has to respond to it. Who cares what the science says if you're not responding, right? So I really like that attitude. So I created the podcast just 5 years ago. And then I was more about biohacking for women over 50, because I'm 54. And I thought, I was 50 back then. And I thought, this is anyways, something I'm interested in. But then as I grew the podcast, I would get more and more requests for talking about menopause and hormones. And so go invite guests who are experts in this, and doctors and researchers. And so I said, you know what, I probably should, because I'm going through this right now myself. And that's why I kind of entered that menopause space, just because it was demanded by my audience.
Yeah. And you took it way further. You went back to school for gerontology At what,
Yeah.
50, 49?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I got my degree at 52. So I was doing I started the podcast and I was doing a degree, a master's of gerontology, which is the study of aging and longevity.
yes.
And we don't only look at the physiological aspects, but we look at the psychological and sociological aspects of aging and why we age and why certain people get diseases and why not. And
Yes.
we look at the whole lifespan from birth to death. It's not just older adults, so that we do have a focus on that. And so I thought that was fascinating because I love the biohacking, but there is no biohacking degree. So I was like, this is gonna be like the next best thing. But what I found was that not only was I not aware of what's happening in the world of older adults, and I've learned a lot there, but I realized that in gerontology, they know nothing about biohacking and that we can do certain things to modify aging or the experience. So I learned things and they learned things, and it was a really great experience. So I got my master's, and then when I started the menopause, I got a certification with the Institute of Bioidentical Medicine, which focuses on hormones. And it's actually a program made for doctors teaching doctors how to treat women through menopause. And even though I'm not a doctor, I was really curious, like, what are they teaching these guys out here and girls? And so
We're not teaching them.
or not teaching them exactly.
Yeah.
So it was really my first experience in getting more of a professional background in hormones and menopause. And I'm no hormone expert by no means, but I got an understanding of what women who are going through menopause of all kinds are being treated, what happens when they walk into a doctor's office, and what can happen and what doesn't happen. So I was really grateful I had a chance to do that. And then I'm using everything I've learned to help women as much as I possibly can through social media and the website and podcast, of course.
So good. So this audience, because we've had a lot of conversations about menopause and perimenopause, and I feel like they're probably more educated than most about what menopause is, but there's always listeners who are new to the show or someone who may not be as familiar. And let's face it, I don't think we can hear it enough times. So can we just start with really helping the listener understand the different stages of menopause before we go deeper into the biohacking piece?
Yeah. I think that's a good idea because I was entering this myself. I was in perimenopause, had no idea what that was at the time. And we didn't have this word perimenopause, but I will first start with menopause, even though it's not exactly the where we start, because it will help us understand what is going on after and around this period of time. So in North America and most Western countries, the average age of when we hit menopause, which is 12 consecutive months without your period, that's like the general word that the way we determine menopause. If you go to a doctor's office, it's kind of ridiculous, but okay. That's you're officially in menopause, or on that date. That's your menopause birth date, and it usually happens around 51.
We should have menopause birthdays, by the way.
It's your menopause birthday. Yeah, exactly. It's a one-day event.
Yes.
And so, but in India, I think it's 46, and other countries that are more underdeveloped are even younger. So 46, 48, that's the average age.
Okay.
And with white women versus black women go through menopause earlier than white women. So if we're talking about North America, so different countries, different cultures, different races, ethnicities have different birth dates, menopause birth dates.
Okay.
But when you say, okay, that's the day I hit menopause, well, what's going on before and after that? So right before that is what we call perimenopause, and that's meaning around, you're going to get towards menopause soon. And that happens usually in your mid-40s. That's on average again. And so that's when you start to have your periods going a little bit wonky, maybe it's you're bleeding heavier, or maybe you skip a period. And again, there's early perimenopause, mid-perimenopause, and late perimenopause, which I won't really go into. But the early menopause, let's say, can happen in your mid-30s to earlier 40s, because that's when your progesterone, which is your calming and relaxing hormone, starts to tank. It's the first one that goes, and it goes quite quickly. Actually, people go, oh, estrogen goes out the window very quickly, but progesterone goes even more quickly. And that's why maybe in your mid 30s, late 30s, or early 40s, depending when you're starting your perimenopause journey, you start to have sleep troubles, or you're getting a little bit more anxious, and you get a little bit more moody. And this is usually due to progesterone. So that's perimenopause. And everything before that would be called premenopause, because a lot of people mixing up pre and peri all the time.
Yeah.
Pre is when you are of childbearing age, let's say.
Okay.
And that's pre. And your period is regular. Everything's happening wonderfully the way it should, hopefully if your hormones are balanced. And then if you happen to have menopause earlier than normal, this is called early menopause, that would be happening in your 40s, like early 40s, 40 to 45. And that's about 5 to 12% of the population in the US do this. Okay, and we're talking about natural menopause, not medical menopause, which I'll talk to you in a moment about that. So that's just, it's normal, totally common. It just happens a little earlier than that, average age. And then if you were to get into menopause in your 30s or under 40, then that's called premature menopause. It's happening a little bit too earlier than normal. It's about 1% of the population. Okay. And then if on the other side of the spectrum of menopause birth date, we have post-menopause. And then that's anywhere after the age of 50, more or less. And then if you happen to get into menopause, that's 12 consecutive months without a period, after age of 55 or older, then you're late onset menopause. So I'm 54, still have a period. It's going wonky, really weird. So you would call me late, I guess, very, very late perimenopause. Yeah. And I will be one of those late onset menopause people. And so, we have the postmenopause. And I think that menopause word is so, it's thrown around so much when they use it, because when we say menopause, we sometimes mean perimenopause, because that's the time where we're really struggling the most with the biggest symptoms. And then things kind of even out a little bit after, post-menopause. Yeah. And then sometimes I meet women and I interview them, and they said, oh, you can't ask me questions because I didn't go through menopause. And I'm like, how old? You said you were 62, right? And they say, yeah. Do you have a period still? No. I said, well, then you're in menopause. Yeah. Or some people would say you're post-menopause. So we're using these words. But what she's referring to is that I didn't feel the symptoms that are classic, like the hot flashes or the night sweats. So I didn't go through menopause.
Like I didn't have the flu. I didn't have menopause. Yeah. So funny. Okay.
Isn't that crazy? So many of those are basic. And you have the surgical menopause, which can happen if you have had a hysterectomy with your ovaries taken out, and you have chemotherapy from breast cancer or things like that. And that can just literally you skip the whole perimenopause experience and you go straight into menopause. And so those are sort of the different stages.
So that's the surgical menopause would be synonymous with medical menopause.
Yeah.
Got it. Yes, that's very clear. Thank you for that. So let's talk about what you mean by biohacking menopause. And I just want to circle back to what you said earlier, because I think it was so beautifully said and so simple. Biohacking, the way you use that word, is self-experimentation. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a self-experimentation. Again, understanding and assuming there are risks. There are risks if you do things, and there are risks if you don't do things, right? There's a risk if you decide to fast, right? But there's maybe a risk if you don't. I mean, I don't know.
What's going to work for you? Nobody knows until you try it.
Exactly. So we have to understand, and if you can look at things in a perspective like that, you're less disappointed if something just doesn't work for you. It's like, that's okay. Your biology doesn't resonate with that therapy or that treatment or that diet or that, I don't know, whatever it is that you want to say. And that's okay. And there's a billion things that we can do to try to change our biology. And that's what we're really trying to do, is hack things in our biology. Yeah. It's for the best of our, for the best of our health. Yeah. So you just move on to the next experiment and don't get disappointed. It's okay. And you can go on.
I really appreciate the distinction because I think for so long when I have heard that word biohacking, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this because I'm sure a lot of my listeners have felt this way at some point too. It's almost like, well, it's going to be a quick fix, right? And it's like,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
we can probably ease your suffering with the right experiments, maybe a little more quickly, but it's a process, right? And the length of someone's process is wildly different from the next person's.
Yes, you're absolutely right. That hack word gives us the impression that we can bypass the foundation.
Right.
And I look at the biohacking foundation like a pyramid. The foundation is the good nutrition or appropriate exercise, getting the sleep, the stress management, having community, purpose in
Yes.
life, et cetera, et cetera. That is biohacking, right? We can
Yes.
do a lot of things in that foundation. And once that foundation's set, and I meet women who they're doing all of that and it's still not working, well, then we go to the middle part of the pyramid. And those will be maybe some supplements or ice bathing or some type of technique that we can bring into our lives that we don't need a doctor for.
Yes.
So then if that's not working, or if you want to go to the top of the tier, well, that you probably need a doctor, and those will be perhaps injections, PRP injections for joint pain, or you maybe need hormone therapy or whatever it is. You need some more guidance there. But very often with the foundation, you don't need the rest of the tiers. Or if you don't do the foundation and you do need those tiers, they don't work as well if you don't have the foundation set or at all, because you need to have these things. And it's really important. And in biohacking, the difference between, say, a biohacker and just a health enthusiast is that we like to test, measure, and assess.
Yes.
And of course, we like the gadgets and data and blood tests and all that. But you can just measure how your pants fit when if you're trying to get a certain body composition. Like that's a measuring tool, and you can assess to see if something's working for you, but you've got to do it, or you've got to take the photo of yourself, do some kind of measurement, because as your body's changing or if something's changing in your life, if it's a slow going thing, you're adapting slowly. So you don't notice these changes.
Of course. Oh yeah.
So
I see that a lot.
you gotta test, measure, and assess to see if something's working for you. And that's another thing that I really like.
And
about
also,
biohacking.
I think that approach, the test, measure, and assess, it helps to manage your brain, because I always say to my clients, data over drama. Like, let's focus on the data. Let's focus on what you're actually doing and what's working and what metrics you're using to measure progress. Because without that, we're just making all these wild assumptions. And that can get us into a whole lot of unnecessary stress. Well,
Exactly.
I really love that just the visual of the pyramid. I've never heard it explained that way, but that is such a sensible way to think about it, that the foundation is your lifestyle and that we can get more complicated and more personalized from there, but without the foundation, right? Like everything starts with a solid foundation. Great homes are built with solid foundations. So
Exactly. It makes sense. But it's the hard work.
it is.
Everybody, who wants to do the hard work? Let's just
I
get the
know.
hack.
I
If I can
know.
take a supplement, my problems go away. Like, wouldn't that be great?
Wouldn't that be great? Yes. Okay, so let's debunk some menopause myths and talk about some different ways of thinking about the myths.
Oh gosh. Well, one of them we kind of said that just drives me nuts is that, I didn't go through menopause. So some women, they associate that menopause experience or the typical symptom with menopause. And in fact, I worry most about the asymptomatic woman because she's not likely to go to a doctor to get checkup. And so I would tell her, well, wait, you need to still see your bones are still getting brittle and you don't feel that. Your arteries may be getting full of plaque and you don't feel that. So you are in menopause, okay? You still need to go through that. And the other side of the coin is when I would interview maybe somebody who's 45 or 48, and she says, oh, I'm too young for menopause. And because she doesn't realize that there is a perimenopause experience. And so I have to explain, no, there's perimenopause and in fact, it's more than just hot flashes and losing your period. There's 103 symptoms. If you talk to Andrea Donsky, she's done some incredible research, and from tinnitus to joint pain to itchy skin, itchy eyes, itchy ears. And a lot of women will go, that's me. I had no idea. That could be my hormones.
I can't tell you how many friends and colleagues and people that I see suffering. And I, will approach that conversation, and not necessarily as a coach, but I'm more as a friend, that, hey, have you considered that
Yeah.
you are in this phase of life? And it amazes me how many people will dismiss it as,
Yeah.
no, that's not what I'm going, like, has nothing to do with what's happening right now. And yet all the signs are there. So I
Yeah.
find that fascinating, especially at a time where we are talking about it so much more. It reminds me how young the conversation still is, because
Yeah.
so many women still don't understand that those tweaks and those shifts and that new suffering is related to what's happening hormonally.
Absolutely. Hormones affect everything. And
Everything.
and maybe it isn't okay, you just need hormone therapy and that's it. Maybe there is something else going on. Maybe it's your thyroid, maybe it's your insulin, I don't know, or maybe some crisis in your life. Yeah, I get a lot of women who reach out to me and they say, well, gosh, I'm not sure if it's menopause or not, or if it's my hormones, and I'm feeling really anxious and I'm really stressed out and I'm really sad all the time. And I said, well, what's going on in your life? And I hear, well, I've lost my job and my boyfriend left me. And I'm like, well, hormones or no hormones, like, of course that's going to be distressful.
Yes.
And so it's not just
Of course
hormones,
it's not. No.
but the lack of hormones makes it harder to go through. It's like you lose a bit of resilience when you don't have those hormones, because I've heard this when I mention this, and then oftentimes a woman will say, well, I just used to be able to handle it better. Like I've lost a job before, but this is like something else. And so, yeah, I think it's a bit of both.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I use that analogy a lot, the stress bucket, in terms of the total stress load of our lives. And I really think of hormones kind of as the bucket. They help to hold the stress. They help us to tolerate the stress. They help to make us more resilient, like you said. And as we're going through this stage of life, our bucket is just a little more rickety. Like the hormones are shifting so much that we're kind of losing the integrity of that bucket a little bit. And this is
Mhm.
where these biohacks and the lifestyle and all the things you mentioned previously can really help to counter that. So
Mhm.
we can carry a sturdy bucket and not spill and make giant messes with our reactivity from our stress.
Exactly. And we are it's what you talk about a lot. It was in aging and longevity would say there's this allostatic load, right? You
Yes.
have a bucket, and as we age, that bucket gets pretty full,
Yes.
right? And men and women. So we all have sort of our limitations. But it seems to me that as you're going through menopause and the stress that we've had, it is, and our hormones really shifting very quickly, which men don't seem to have. Our load seems to be getting a little more overflowed faster
Yeah.
than the guys. And that can be very, very distressful.
Absolutely. And
And that's
midlife
what
too, I think we have a lot more stress. Like we're in the throes of our careers often. We're trying to get kids off to whatever that next phase is, and it's usually expensive. um,
Yes.
we're contending
Aging
with,
parents.
yeah, marriage challenges, retirement on the horizon, like all these things. And
Yeah.
so recognizing that life looks very different than it did 10 or 20 years ago, and your physiology is very different. It's both and.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. And we can do so many things on all sides
Yes.
to support our health and to get through this phase and become bigger, better, faster, stronger.
Yeah.
And really, I think menopause should be the best years of our lives. And that's why
Absolutely.
I'm trying to help as much as I can to get that message out that menopause isn't all doom and gloom. Like if we could just shift the attitude a little bit and understand that we do have a lot of things that going on that are great and a lot of things to look forward to as well. So that takes a little bit of introspection, a little bit of changing perspective, and that's, and life is so much better when you can look at it that way. And again, menopause, if your health is off the rails, menopause is a time, it's an opportunity to become the best version of yourself. And why not take that time to do it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So on that note, let's talk about some of the specific biohacking that you would often introduce to menopausal women, and also prefacing that by just reminding the listener that, again, it's an experiment for everybody. Everybody's going to respond a little bit differently. But what are some of the big players that you usually pull out of your tool bag?
Well, the easiest thing to do is the hormone therapy. I have to say, it's I'm a big fan, but of bioidentical. Just because I've seen it change so many women's lives from, being completely derailed to can't sleep, night sweats, change. And how you expect a woman to go to the gym and eat well if she just has not had a good night?
Exactly.
And it's been going like this for years and years. So I like to say even though it's the top tier, the pyramid, it's a support, it's a crutch, but that doesn't mean you don't do all the foundation, because sometimes it's really hard to get someone to do that. So once they get a little bit of their hormones replenished or topped up, or however they do it, because there's a million and one ways to do this, then they can finally get this energy to go to the gym and then do all the healthy things. But we do everything together. So that's I think that's one of the biggest hack in terms of menopause, but you need a doctor to do this. And it doesn't mean, and just because I think it's a great thing doesn't mean that's the only way. There's 101 ways to skin a cat. So if you don't want to go down the hormone route, then we have of course we have certain types of supplements, and we have certain types of phytoestrogens. If you want to go I hate that we use that word natural, because bioidentical is quite natural too. There's nothing more natural than your own hormones. But I think there is that is a great hack, is to go down some of those routes. But it depends maybe on your symptom. So if you are dealing with hot flashes, let's say, and night sweats and you don't want to do hormone therapy, then there's a really cool supplement called pycnogenol. I think it's called French pine I don't know, it's French pine, something like that.
Okay.
But it's pycnogenol, as I can remember. And it's just a simple supplement that seems, again, supplements in the research is kind of hit and miss. And I see it the same thing in my community. I can say, look, you can try it, ask your doctor, obviously, if you can take some supplements, and then off you go. And I'd see maybe some say, this is fabulous. Other ones be like, I got to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And that's fine too.
Yeah.
When it comes to weight gain, which is a big thing that people have, and I hate to use that word weight gain, and I try to shift the perspective and say, we're going to build muscle. Okay. Yeah. We're going to focus on getting strong, not getting small, getting thin,
it's not
tiny.
Losing weight, it's gaining health, is a way I hear it that I really love, right?
Yeah, you're gaining health.
Yes.
But in terms of if that's really what you want, is like burn the fat, let's build muscle, because muscle will burn the fat. Okay. Yeah. And it's something more positive to look at. And muscle weighs more than fat. So don't even bother looking at a scale, because you may not lose anything, or you may even gain, but your body composition is going to change. And so when we are talking about building muscle, there's two things that are really, really important. Well, we know that we have to strength train. That's probably the most effective, because what's happening in our generation is the 80s generation. Let's say we've been doing Jane Fonda and doing all this kind of chronic cardio kind of stuff. I'm a big fan of Jane Fonda, by the way, and I was doing aerobics and all that. But I'm just saying,
no,
we were running
Jane Fonda, right?
I love her. But we were running the treadmill, doing all this stuff and trying to burn the fat with all the cardio. Doesn't seem to be working as well. And then we're eating less, which is, put those two together. And then we're fasting. I mean, talk about stress on the body.
I know.
More cortisol. Cortisol loves fat, particularly around the belly. It's just a recipe for disaster. So let's eat more. Let's build the muscle. And when we're trying to build muscle, that's why we talk a lot about strength training. HIIT training as well, that high intensity interval training. Don't want to go more than 45 minutes, because you're doing this pretty intensively, and then you're going to get into that chronic cardio zone. But those types of exercises seem to be working really well for our generation. And of course, we have to adapt in case people have injuries, and we have surgeries and injuries, and things are happening at this age. So you have to be mindful, and obviously get a trainer would be to get proper form and not hurt yourself.
Yeah.
But you cannot build muscle if you don't feed it. We need to get the protein in. And I'm on that protein bandwagon like everybody else, because I've seen it work so well in terms of giving satiety and not overeating and building the muscle. And it just does so much. And so getting enough adequate protein, whatever that is for you, because the ranges are all over the place, and you'll hear different things from different people, and it depends on you and your body weight and your goals and how much exercise you're doing, et cetera. We're not even going that. But I want people to understand that just because you're exercising or lifting heavy and you're trying to fast, you're trying to eat fewer calories, it's a recipe for disaster.
I know.
For your
Oh
hormones, for
gosh.
everything else.
I'm so
You gotta eat. So who doesn't want to eat? Although I do meet a lot of women our age who just can't fit it in. It's hard. They're so used to depriving themselves or running around all day long and then just eating one big meal. You got to treat yourself like a 5-year-old. You wouldn't tell your 5-year-old, oh, we're going to fast all day and then, forget breakfast and lunch. You would never do that to your child or your 5-year-old self. You would feed them before they go to school and you'd give them a lunch and maybe some snacks and then you have a proper dinner. So I find this formula works really, really well, especially if, women have been depriving themselves. They're much happier when they start to build muscle. And when you're building the muscle, you're burning the fat. And one of the cool hacks that we have in the biohacking world for anyone who is struggling with building muscle or is injured or who's had a surgery or who can't get all their movement in is blood flow restriction. And I'm a big fan of the Katsu bands. And these are these bands that you put on your arms or your legs, and it partially restricts blood flow. So if you're doing Katsu, it's pretty safe for most people. But if you're doing just the traditional blood flow restriction bands, you need to get the guidance of somebody. But there's so much research done on this. And I've gone through several years of this with myself as well as my community and seeing the benefits when you are really struggling. I had osteoarthritis. I couldn't walk. For 2 years, no exercise like I used to, no impact, just boring rehab. And it just got worse and worse until all I did was just a bit of mobility. And then I had surgeries. And then I did not lose any muscle, but I actually gained it because I was keeping my protein up, even though I wasn't burning it like I used to. And I was doing my rehab as much as I could, but I had these Katsu bands on, and that was it's a lifesaver for me.
What's
now, I'm
the
not
mechanism
saying
of that? Is it pushing more nutrition into the area?
No, what happens? So imagine if you're partially restricting blood flow and then you suddenly release it, you get a lot of blood flow going, and you have release of growth hormone. So it's your own endogenous growth hormone that is being created inside of you. So you would be wearing these bands just for 10, 15 minutes and your body thinks it's doing 100 burpees. Yeah. You don't feel it. You're like going through the day. You're like, I feel fine. I'm doing this for 10, 15 minutes, but your body is getting a totally different signal. Yeah. And so I think this is just, I don't know why in gerontology, no one's talking about this because I'm not getting my 85-year-old father-in-law to go lift heavy weight. He won't do it. Yeah. But I could put him some bands on while he's puttering around the house at least, right? So again, I don't think it's a replacement, but I think it's a great add-on when you need it or when you're really, really struggling and you're just not, you don't know what else to do. But we do have, so if you have the traditional, it's a constant restriction because the ones I have, Katsu, have this sort of cyclical nature. So you feel like, oh, I could go all day with this stuff. It's easy, not painful. But if you have the constant one, it's a little bit more painful. And you can't, it's like, it was great during COVID when I couldn't get to the gym. And I was lifting just a little water bottle and it actually was so heavy. It was hurting so much because it's an extra load on you. So there's different ways to do BFR. But again, if you're going to go into this world, please contact somebody who knows what they're doing. Yeah. And
just to clarify, what does the BFR stand for?
Blood flow restriction.
Blood flow restriction. Okay. And it's Katsu, the bands.
And it's actually a partial. It's not like fully restricting your blood flow.
I would hope not. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And there are contraindications as well. So that's one, again, don't buy this stuff on Amazon. And, you can call me and I'll hook you up and send you the right person.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fascinating. Okay. Good to know. And on this note, I guess I would love for you to share a little bit because I know you just had, was it your second hip replacement?
Yes.
Yeah. So you've been through some pretty intense surgeries in the past few years. What do you want to share about that in terms of recovery and in terms of, because you did recover quite quickly.
Oh, yes. I just had my 3-month checkup with the second one today. And he's like amazed. He's like, I can't, he's like, but he keeps telling me, I know you feel great and you got to take it slow. Yeah. And I hear this story a lot of a lot of people get surgeries where they just say you feel so much better that you just feel like a racehorse and you just want to get right out and get your life back.
Yes.
And you got to reel yourself in. But one thing I want to talk about in terms of surgeries, osteoarthritis, or maybe a knee replacement or whatever kind of surgery, when you are younger, let's say, and you're in your 50s and you expect this to happen in your 70s, it's a real hard thing to accept in the beginning if you've never been exposed to other people who've had these types of surgeries.
Yeah.
And I had so many people say, how in the world did this happen to you? Because you're the healthiest person I know in the world, and I'm very disciplined, and I try my hardest. I've been able to biohack it for years, which is quite amazing, until the biohacks didn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And I have osteoarthritis because of I had 9 out of the 12 risk factors, which is usually age and being female, having an injury, being very active, having sports and things like that. So because I was genetically sort of set up for this without realizing it. And so I think I love talking about it, and I appreciate you allowing me to speak about it, because you do feel alone, very much like menopause, because no one's really talking about it. I've even found celebrities who talk about it only years after they've had the replacements, and I'm like, God, I wish you would have spoken about this, because I would have not feel so bad. And then you realize, wow, there's this whole other world of athletic people who do have to have surgeries like this.
Yeah. Partially
Because of genetics and age and being athletic. So once you've opened up that box, you've accepted that and understand, then you move into the surgeries. But I'd love to share some biohacks in terms of any kind of surgery. And in this age, we're having hysterectomies and mastectomies, or knee replacements, whatever it is. There's so many important things that we need to know before the surgery, during the surgery, and after the surgery. And this is a whole hour podcast that I've created on this. I can just send it to you.
Yeah, for sure. We'll put it in the link or in the page.
But I really want to preface that most importantly is you got to train for your surgery if you want to have a quick recovery.
Yeah.
If you don't care about quick recovery, do whatever you want. Because a lot of people say, you know what, I can't move, I hurt, I'm in pain. I understand it and I believe it. I know exactly what you're going through. But you still need to try to maintain muscle mass, that you're going to be cut open, your tissues, everything. So try your best, do whatever rehab or mobility that you can, and get your protein in. And you're going to need it more during the surgery. Right? Even if you have aging parents, try to get them to eat more. And when you cannot eat more, that's when you go into essential amino acids. They come as pills and powders and all kinds of stuff that you can take. And that is going to support the muscle and rebuild the tissue. Yeah. So when you're going into the surgery, those are kind of major things. And of course, there's all kinds of supplements and things that we can do to prepare, and we'll talk about that another time. But I think another key thing was when you're in surgery, of course, you're not going to really feel like eating or all this stuff. And that's kind of when those essential amino acids are really fabulous. You can just pop those in. Yeah. And then after the surgery, and you can do this before the surgery, there are some pretty cool peptides that you may want to consider in terms of rebuilding and recovery of muscles and tissue.
Will you explain to listeners what a peptide is? Because I think a lot of people
I was going to say
know.
Peptides are short chain amino acids, basically. Anything, I think it's more than 20, don't quote me on this, is called a protein. Okay, protein is broken down in amino acids, and a peptide will be a short, like 2, 3, 4, 5 of them together, and they're very powerful. And a peptide, when you take them in this way for a surgery or for any other issues, there's peptides for your skin, there's peptides for anything. So it could be topical, it could be a cream, it could be sublingual, it could be an injection. There's a billion and one ways to do this, and that peptide world is growing so fast. And you got to be careful again, because people are trying to sell all kinds of stuff. So you got to do your research before you do this stuff. But when you have a big surgery like I have, you got to do the injectable. And I hate to say it, I hate injecting myself. I know I'm a biohacker, but I don't like doing that stuff. I try to avoid it, but I try to talk my way out of it, because I got some really fabulous tips from our guests, right?
Your podcast host too, right?
And so we have had access to all these brilliant doctors. And so I got these cool protocols from them. And the two peptides that I think were really, really effective for me and for anyone going through surgery, and they're pretty standard, is called BPC 157.
Okay.
And I think it's called body protective compound. I think that's what it means. And then you have TB 500 or thymosin beta 4. Okay. TB 500, thymosin 4, it's the same thing. One's synthetic, one's natural, but they're all injectable. And what these do is it helps repair tissue. It promotes angiogenesis. So you have more blood flow, you have more connections, you have better recovery. And I noticed a faster recovery because with one surgery,
how cool you didn't have them before the first time.
I know. Well, the first time I did do the BPC.
Oh, you did? Okay.
157. Yeah. And then with the second one, I added the TB 500.
Yeah.
And I noticed an uptick with the second one. And I said, gosh, I think this is a really great combination. And you'll see these sold very often in combination. Okay. And that's why my doctor originally wanted me to do two, but they're expensive.
Okay.
So I'm like, gosh, that's why on the first time I only did one. And then I'm nervous, like I'm injecting myself. This is crazy. And what if something goes wrong? You get all these things in your head. As the biohacker I am, I'm a wimpy one. And so I think those are two definite peptides to look at when you are going down this road. In terms of recovery. And then, of course, there's the whole nutrition piece and the protein, and then you've got get your exercise and your rehab. That's super important post-surgery, as well as there's a ton of supplements that you can take. We won't go into that, but I just wanted to throw out some peptides from the biohacking world that I think would be really, really useful for people to look into when they're going to surgery.
Yeah, and I love that you bring it up because I don't think we've never even had a conversation on this podcast about peptides. I know it's becoming more mainstream. I hear about it a lot more in the spaces and places that I travel in, but
I can connect you to some great peptide
because
experts.
I'd love to have somebody on the show to kind of do a deeper dive into that. That would be fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, so great. I love all of this. We could talk forever. I do want to ask you, because so much of what we've talked about today, even though we did introduce like the full span of, the life cycle of a woman hormonally, we've mostly been speaking to women in sort of that perimenopause, postmenopause phase. You have a daughter, yes? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw her on your website. What do you want her to know? Like for the stage that she's in life, she's young, like what do you want her to know to help prepare her for not seamless travel, but maybe more grace-filled travel through this phase?
She should understand her body and how hormones are affecting her.
Yeah.
I think I teach her that. I mean, she's very much hears everything about menopause, so she's really prepared. But if anyone here obviously is not having that conversation with your daughter, please have the conversation about menopause and perimenopause in general, without scaring her, because this is what happens is now we have all this social media and we have a lot of those comedy things about women dying and sweating and horrible. It's just so when you have somebody in their 20s and 30s looking at that, they're absolute
terrified,
fear in their head. And as we know through all these interviews I've done, it's a spectrum. You have 25% of the women feel nothing. Not that nothing's happening, but they feel nothing. It's great, smooth transition. And then you've got 25% on the other end of the spectrum who got every single symptom under the sun. And most of us are somewhere in between, right? Have something going on. So I think I tell my daughter to test her hormones. And you can test them through blood, you can test them through urine, just kind of understand them a little bit, get familiar with the words estrogen and estradiol and progesterone, and then dial into your body, know your period, track your cycle, right? Because this is part of the hormone piece. And when you know your body, you know your period is coming and you know what things are happening, and you notice the way you eat, the way you sleep, the way you move can affect your body and how you feel and how it looks. Mm-hmm. This is so key. And we don't need gadgets or we don't need stuff if you're really dialed in. Mm-hmm. It's nice to have those gadgets to maybe confirm what we are suspicious of, or if we're totally like not in tune with our body. Eventually you can just let go of all those gadgets because you know yourself so well. So I think knowing yourself, knowing your body, and understanding your hormones.
Such a good point. It's interesting. I'm 48. This past summer, I had a uterine ablation because I was a really heavy clotter. I have a blood disorder, and it was just affecting my period to the point that I felt like I was losing weeks of my every month. Right? I was like,
you had the crime scene periods.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah.
So I had an ablation, which, oh my gosh, what a game changer. And
Yeah.
I got concerned a little bit because I thought, okay, I know I'm deep in the throes of perimenopause for so many reasons. I've known that for a while. How am I going to know when my periods start changing and all the things? But what's fascinating is because I do know my body very well. I know when I'm ovulating, and also tracking with something like an Aura ring, which is, fairly simple to use. It's tracking my temperature. So
Yeah.
I can watch my temperature change, and then I can correlate that with my symptoms. So it's like, oh yeah, I am having a period and I'm 28 days on the nose and that's still happening, even though I don't have the blood. So it's just
Yeah.
interesting that you bring up that point, because that's very much been my experience, that knowing my body so well, I feel like I'm still very much in touch with my menstrual cycle, even though I no longer have a period.
So good for you. Good for you. That's exactly where you want to be.
Yeah.
And I wish I knew this when I was younger. I just don't even know. The first time someone explained to me what the menstrual cycle looks like, I think I was 48.
Yeah.
And it was from a man. I was so embarrassed. I was like, oh my God. He was showing me, this is estrogen and this is
Yes.
progesterone and this is what's happening. I'm like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing.
Yeah.
And I was in my 40s. I mean, this is ridiculous.
I know.
I never paid attention, never cared, but I also didn't have, I had pretty easy periods. I was really lucky
Yeah.
in that sense. It was pretty uneventful. I didn't care. I would train whether I had period, no period.
Yeah.
Just, again, but I do wish I was better in tune, because when the perimenopause hit,
Yeah.
and you're like, well, okay, I guess what's happening, what's going on. But I think the Aura ring came just in time. Like you said, I can say, and I also use the app called Clue, and that's, before Aura, now Aura, you can log your period. At the
Yes.
time it didn't. But Clue is pretty cool, because then you can say, I'm spotting, or I feel like this, and there's some perimenopause feature on there that I haven't bought yet, because you have to pay for that. So
Sure.
I'm like, oh, I don't know, but just
Okay,
probably
but that's good to
eventually.
know. Clue is it's called. Okay, good to
Yeah.
know. Oh, this was so great. I love this conversation. I'm sure listeners are going to reap a lot of value from this. Where can they
Can I
find out?
ask you?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Can I ask you just, I don't know if it's interesting for the listeners,
Yeah.
and you can edit this out if it's not interesting, but what is your menopause experience like? It's this transition. What are you feeling and what have you done about it?
Yeah. First, I think I would say that I think I was very well prepared, not because I was well educated in terms like my mom didn't really teach me anything. And she definitely put the fear of God in me about turning 40 and 45, because I watched her experience with it. But I think because I've been training my whole life, I've been heavyweight training since I was in my early 20s. I've been really into my nutrition. It's because it's an interest of mine. It's always been an interest of mine. And I think that has made my experience, I don't want to say soft, but softer. I would say my biggest challenges are before my period starts. I definitely have some sleep disruption, where if something wakes me up, I can't get back to sleep, or I'll wake up, at a weird hour and not be able to get back to sleep. The anxiety you spoke of with the drop of progesterone, I've never had anxiety in my life. That is something that I'm more aware of, especially around my cycle. I'm most aware of it. But in general, I'm so curious about HRT because I think I feel good, and I often wonder, would I feel better? So I haven't crossed that bridge yet. I haven't had that conversation with my provider. I mean, we have the conversation all the time, but I haven't really poked her about putting me on it. But I'm definitely very open to it. And interestingly, I think that my education around all this has been so timely because, like I said to you, I have a blood clotting disorder, which 5 years ago, no doctor would have touched HRT with a 10-foot pole knowing you have a blood clotting disorder. But now we know that that's not true. There's so many different forms of hormone replacement that we can use. And thank God, because I remember when I got my diagnosis, my physician told me, my first question, and she laughed out loud. My first question was, am I not going to be a candidate for HRT? And I was like 40 at the time, 41. And she goes, I can't believe you're asking me that question. That's the first thing that came out of your mouth. And I was like, yeah, because I work with the population.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and her response was, you're not a candidate. And
Oh my God. Oh, she laughed because you were not a candidate.
yeah,
Oh
she laughed
God.
because I
Oh,
asked
she
it,
did
but then
not.
her response was also, you're not a candidate. And now, like,
Oh.
having
No.
had all these amazing people to talk to and being educated more about it and all the different various types, I just like gently, get push a little information her way. Like, that's not true. And we are going
Yeah.
to reapproach that conversation. Um,
Oh, that's
so
really good. When anyone who's listening to you and you included is, it's always easy to give it a try. Like
yeah,
if you don't like it,
right,
you just stop. It's not like something you have to wean yourself off
right.
of, or you'll never be able to stop ever. It's kind of, just try it.
Yes,
Again, it's an experiment. And if it
exactly.
works, great. If not, you can try around tweaking it and seeing if you can find your dosage and your formula and your delivery method. And if you've tried everything and you still don't like it, well, you just stop.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that point because I think that that's such an important thing for people to hear, that it's not a forever decision. And it does take some calibration, which is why you need to be working with a menopause specialist, someone who really understands hormones, because you probably will have to recalibrate your doses. And ultimately, if it doesn't work, okay, now you know yourself better. Great, move on.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So great. Okay, so where can people find out more about you? And also, we were going to talk about, I always love giving a gateway into your work. So if there's, an offer that you have in terms of helping them to dive a little deeper into anything we've discussed, I think that would be awesome to share.
Then everyone can find me at hackmyage.com, and all my social media is hackmyage. Then we have tons of freebies. I got a page just called freebies, but I will send that link to you. You can choose if you want to learn more about sleep, if you want to learn how to biohack menopause 101. I've got radiation protocols if you have to go and get an mammogram or I got a different MRI that's for the gadolinium. But if you have any kind of x-rays or whatever, there's so many great freebies out there. But I'll also send you the link to the menopause quiz, because maybe somebody's listening going, I'm not sure, am I in menopause or
Yeah.
perimenopause, or, if they didn't quite get it, you can always take the menopause quiz and just throw out a freebies at you.
I love it. I love it. Well, what a pleasure to talk to you. And I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing in the world. I am sure you are helping to alleviate unnecessary suffering for so many women. And yeah, I'm sure that we will have more conversations in the future.
Oh, I'm excited. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
having
Zora.
me.
Have a great day. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story. And it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort. And with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.